Hi guys, Hengist here. I've been tagged an old game with many things about it, which was quite interesting. But yes, thank you, Itinerant Hobbyist, for nominating me. What do I do outside of wargaming? Nothing. I'm dedicated to it. And no, on a serious note, I've got quite a few diverse interests. I was a former archaeologist for many, many years. So that is still important to me, although I just don't get enough time with the work I'm doing on YouTube. But that has really given me the skills to research. I did a lot of work on the Anglo-Saxons and the Roman period, but later towards the end of that career I was basically working mainly on ordnance and explosives and things like that. It's a long story, but I got involved with that, and that's really what really started to trigger my interest in World War II. And although I've probably always had one, my father was very much involved in wargaming, ironically. I didn't find this out till very close before he passed away, about his involvement being called away for special operations. And I think part of that was to do with what he did in Vietnam in terms of arranging and organising things, especially related to tanker airlift. So that was using helicopters to land on tankers. And I think something to do with that. I've never really quite got to the bottom of what he did. Suffice to say, had there been during that terrible Cold War era something going ballistic, so to speak, I think he would have been taken away, and my mum, my brother and I would have been left to fend for ourselves in a bleak nuclear winter. But yeah, that archaeology is something I keep my eyes on, and I try and keep interested within. I haven't been out in the field for about a year, but you know, when I get the opportunity to go out there, I absolutely adore it. My second hobby outside of wargaming has always been karate, and I've always studied a very traditional style of karate. I don't train enough with my teacher and mentor Steve, predominantly because I've been very busy with other things, and also I think part of the reason for that as well is that although I train in my own way these days, you know, I have found that what with work and everything else, it's very difficult. But I am working my way back to fitness. I had a very bad ankle injury, which is nearly 2 years old, and I've only just started running back on that to try and get back in. But you know, I work special education needs with some very challenging children, and that has always caused injuries and things like that. You know, it's quite difficult to do. But realistically, apart from that, you know, obviously the beast, you know, my dog is so important to me, and lots of people have talked about walking, and lots of people have talked about getting out and doing things. But I think that having a dog, certainly when I was going through a lot of trauma, I brought up 3 girls on my own, and all of that, having that dog and getting me out there was an incredibly important thing. And whilst I do produce quite prolific work, a lot of that was down to circumstance, and you know, I just wanted to hone what I was doing and develop my skills, and I am going to continue to develop my skills, you know, within the wargaming side. I mean, it isn't just to me about wargaming per se, it's also about the production, which I'm really sort of teaching myself about. So that I could say is a hobby. Outside, no, not really, I suppose. So those are the sort of things I do. Obviously I read, listen to music, and generally very difficult, as I've been told, but you know, that's me. You know, like it or love it. But I do try to state what I think is sometimes completely overlooked, and I do want to see more people war gaming. Nothing wrong with gaming at all. Gaming is good, and it obviously brings people into the hobby, but I think we've lost a lot in terms of the old art of it. And it isn't just about putting on a game and playing. It's all about context, and it's all about what you learn from it, and that's what's so important. And I'm trying to get this message across to people, that when you really start researching things and you start to read more and more, because that's what wargaming does, it makes you really read. And I think as a teacher and educator, it's so important that people read more. I mean, we tend to just now click a switch and just check something out on YouTube, but you need to read about it as well. And I think reading leads to greater knowledge, and you want a little bit more probably from what you're simulating. That said, the hardest thing in wargaming is being actually using complex things that are going on and reducing that down to very, very simple formulas which are going to work within the game. And why we've been very driven and very innovative in what we're trying to do. For instance, last week, we had to run one of the hardest sets I've tried to do because we just couldn't physically get it in. I mean, we've got a very big table, we've got great facilities. Rude Boy Craig's brilliant what he's built, but how do you fit Walhaven Airfield into a 11 foot by 5? You'd think, oh, that's easy. It isn't, because of the proximity geographically of other key features. So I'm always thinking every time I'm doing it. I'm always reading, and I'm trying to work out how to do things simply. And I also want to bring a lot of entertainment into it. So, although I have physical and cerebral interests outside of wargaming, a lot of that is interconnected. And I look at where I am, and I enjoy what I'm doing. And I think the community around wargaming and the hobby as a whole is a fantastic one. There's some brilliant people, but the big problem I see within the industry and the hobby, which is worrying me, is the commercialization. Because in doing so much so quick, because there's a lot of money at stake, we can sometimes I think get a little bit distracted from the histories, and we can also in danger of distortion or dishistory, as I like to call it, because people start wanting to create things to sell products, and then ultimately they're not really seeing what happens in the record. And when I talk about the record, when we look back through history, we are still re-examining history, because that's a key thing about history in itself, is what can we learn from it, how can we stop and not repeat the same mistake. And if those history or perceptions of history are distorted, then you're going to get different outcomes, really, I suppose, to really what history was all about. So to recap, yeah, I like to throw people on the ground or get thrown on the ground. That's generally me at my age these days. I like to read books that I suppose really make my mind work a little bit harder. I love to walk my dog Gibson, the Beast. He's been the most incredible companion as well through my life in the last few years. I like to do a bit of gym and all of that. I'm trying to keep myself fit as best you can as you get older. And I suppose archaeology has always been there within me, and I went to university quite late. And I've always loved it, and that is very much how do you examine things, how do you research things, and things like that. And I think that helps me in what I do. But my real love is in the production now, and learning how to produce narratives and stories and try to make things interesting and showcase wargaming in itself. So I bored you senseless, so let's put some controversy in there, as I always do. But I suppose we need to do more, really, in the community. We need to connect more, and we need to wargame more as well, and showcase more history, I think. So that's me trying to do my bit for the Empire, or what's left of it, and everything else. So thank you very much for tagging me, Itinerant Hobbyist. And I think I'd like to tag a couple of people that I've always been very interested in as well, and what they do. The first would be the Mad Tin Hatter, who I've known for a long time and does a lot of work. That's James Macmillan. He does a lot of work, very focused on a particular wargaming theatre, and monstrously great work. The second person, and very, very important to me, and also within Achtung Panda, is Dave White of Tora Achtung Bunai, which is all about basically the war in the Far East. Dave and I have chatted quite a bit. We're going to meet at some point because we've got lots and lots of ideas. And Dave was very formulaic in, I think, the British Army dealing with wargaming and concepts like that. and he also, I think, is a great wargamer. I mean, he's done a lot of gaming as I have in the past, but he's like me. We want more to tell the story and a focus on China and what happened over there. Not just all the marine amphibious landings. We want the land war, because the land war is just ignored in most cases, and that needs to be told. And I can't wait until we do that, and I can't wait linking up with Dave and some of the concepts that we're going to develop, because I'm sure it's going to be magical stuff. So those two I'd like people to basically find out a little bit more about. Dave's a very, very busy guy, and so is James, but I think both of them will be quite interesting to learn a little bit more about. So it's over and out for me. Yes, there are bombers over Volhaven. Stand by for that episode, which I hope is going to come out all right. And in the meantime, stay lucky, stay safe, and stay tuned. Bye for now.